Welcome to this PIQ session on ad hoc reporting in Excel. Before we get into the session properly, just a quick agenda of items that we're going to cover. First of all, we'll introduce you to the data dictionary document that is available. Quite an important document as it highlights all the different data structures and information that's available through this solution. We'll have a look at the different data sources available. So these are the different types of information across things like financial, utilization, staff, workflow, CRM, and so on. We'll look at how to actually connect these different data sources. There's a common way of connecting to a data source through Excel that can be applied across all the different areas available. We'll have a look at building reporting in Excel using pivot functionality. And we'll also have a look at the out-of-the-box solutions that are available to you from a Practice IQ point of view. So there's a series of templates or starting points for you to go with. So now on to some learning outcomes for this session. Firstly, you will be able to find and use the data dictionary for the PIQ solution. You should then be able to understand how to connect directly to a PIQ data source or Cube database and go from there. You'll know how to work with a pivot format and the field list to build reports in Excel. And finally, you'll understand some of the starting points that are available out of the Practice IQ out-of-the-box system. So, without any further ado, let's get on with the session. Okay, let's get started by looking at some of the structures and the data that's available to you for the ad hoc reporting through Excel. The best way to find this information is to use the data dictionary, and the quick way of getting access to the data dictionary is a link on the help option within the Practice IQ intranet site. So just click on the help icon there and then the link for this document. It's just a PDF, so open that up. Okay. Now this is quite a large document and we're not going to go through nearly any of it in this session, but it's very good to understand that it's available to you for reference. It's broken into two sections along the lines of how Practice IQ or the solution is working in the background. Practice IQ has a SQL data warehouse. It also has a layer called Analysis Services or OLAP databases, and both these sections are extensively documented here. If we go through here, you can see some of the SQL tables that are available, some of the dimension tables that are available in the data warehouse. What I mean by dimension tables is effectively it's information on information. It's the metadata assigned to the transactions in your system. If we scroll even further down here, we have our OLAP or Analysis Services layer. Now this is probably more important in terms of the ad hoc analysis through Excel, so it's worthwhile having a look in here to see what's available. It will document the different types of information that you have available to drag on to a report. When we talk about dimensions, that say is those summary or that metadata which we then apply to the transaction information. But these dimensions we can then collate and summarize this information to make it easy to work with on a pivot type format. We have different cubes. Now the cubes represent different types of data, and we've got a whole series of those. So we've got a core cube which deals with our standard utilization, revenue, lockup, WIP and debt reporting. We have a perspective layer we can connect to, which basically summarizes all that core information and makes it easier to report on. We have some specific sort of operational type data sets around workflow, tax and CRM and so on. All this will become a lot clearer once we get onto the actual reports and start using them. But just remember that this resource of the data dictionary is available directly through the intranet here. So let's move on now to the templates that are available to you from the out-of-the-box solution of Practice IQ. We've built Excel workbooks for every data set that is available across the board and across the whole solution. We're going to start off by looking at the core solution. As I mentioned before, this is your base utilization, revenue and WIP and debt reporting. It's just a matter of opening up the workbook, just like any other one. Okay, and we have a tab per data set, in this case utilization, lockup history and revenue. Now, it is possible to sort of make connections or different connections to the different data sets as you wish. These are all predefined for you, and in fact in the intro here page we've got a little mechanism to make it a little bit easier for you. So you can simply type in the server name, the database name for the OLAP database, and the SQL version that is available on your system. These can all be made available or just be simply by asking your network or database administrator. These are all predefined, as I said, but if you do want to make a connection yourself to a specific cube, it's quite simple. You just use Excel to do that. So if we just add a new sheet, and we go to a data tab here, and from here we can choose the other source and analysis services. Okay. Again, all you need here is the name of your SQL server. In this case, it is just my local machine. And then you go and choose the overarching PIQ database and then the cube in question. So again, I'm just going to choose the utilization cube here and go finish. Okay. It'll ask you where you want to start your report from. In this case, I'm happy with the A1, the cell A1, and there we go. Okay, so we now have a live connection to the underlying cube utilization from the core database. Okay, and it is really just a matter of building up your report from here. So what you have available to you is what we call a field list. And from the field list, we have access to all the items that you saw or you can see and reference through the data dictionary. We have all the measures and calculations that are available to us. For example, here, things like billable hours, billed, and so on. Year-to-date versions of those. Okay. And all the dimensions and hierarchies, so that metadata that I was talking about. Okay. So a common one here would be a time-based analysis. So for example, timesheet periods. We just drag on to the overall filter there. You can see it updates the pivot table over here. Now on the row, I'd want to view by a certain attribute. So in this case, we might go for staff members. Okay. And I may also want to filter the overall report by a department. Once we've got our metadata or our reporting structures in place using dimensions and hierarchies available, we then drag on the information we want to view. So in this case, I want to see possibly billable hours, and what else do we need to see? Here we go, maybe non-billable hours. That'll do it for now. And you can see we have a working pivot table connected up to the underlying data source, which in this case is utilization, and we can then interact with that accordingly. Okay. Using the filters, you can choose a specific department in this case, and then we have a report by that. And just using Excel and the pivot table options available to you, you can drag and drop and create your own world effectively in here. So for example, if I wanted a summary by department, I'd maybe drag it on to the row here, and you can then see a breakdown by audit, BAS, and so on in terms of the analysis available by staff member. Okay, so it's easy as that. You make a connection, you use a field list, you drag on what you want, and then you simply save the workbook. Just like any other Excel workbook, it can be saved down to a network share, saved locally, saved into a document management system, whatever you want. Once you come back into Excel, if you need to refresh the data, you can simply right-click and choose Refresh, and that will update the information based on the last build of the PIQ solution in the background. You can also, let's say in pivot table here, set it to refresh as soon as you open the file. So you open up the workbook, it will automatically refresh the data into the pivot tables. Okay. So just going back through these tabs here, all these have just facilitated the connection to a specific data source. So here's a slightly more involved utilization report. You can see there's a few more parameters or filters on the top based on those hierarchy selections. There's staff on the rows, and you have a few more measures and calculations built in here. Lockup history is the same. As soon as you click on that, it gives you a field list of the underlying data source that is lockup history. So there's a lot more information around here, WIP and debt, movement, aging, and so on in here. And you have the matter-based drill paths or hierarchies that are available to you. Okay. Revenue, same deal, except we're now connected to the revenue cube, and you have a similar approach to the matter-based analysis, time-based and debtor periods, and so on. Okay. So these are just seen as a starting point to building whatever you need within an Excel workbook connected to the underlying solution that is sound and safe. So if you're, one person is accessing a pivot report to a lockup report, a data source, another person looks at the same thing, you're accessing exactly the same structures and exactly the same data. So there's no sort of manual intervention here, which allows things to go wrong. So that was the core access to utilization, lockup history, and revenue. Some of the other options, we have a perspective layer. Okay, so this is one cube, okay, built across the different perspectives layers in the data warehouse. Just think of the perspective layers as the different attributes in your database, and we've repeated the whole firm's information or the whole database information across the different attributes. So we can see at this top level here we have a firm level, we have the same totals by partner, by managed department and staff, and so on. If you drill down, you have the context there. Oh, we haven't looks like we haven't refreshed the information, so I'll just do that. It's a good opportunity to hopefully see this working. Just put in our server name, PIQ perspective, update connections, and hopefully now we have a connection. There we go. So we can see that when you drill down to the partner, all the information in the data warehouse has been sliced by each individual partner where it's relevant to them. If we go and choose a perspective, we can isolate the totals here. Now the advantage of the perspective layer is that it brings together all the separate data sets that we've had to deal with separately before. So we've got all the debt measures, we have all the WIP measures, we have a vast array of time-based analysis, this time last year, this time last period, that sort of thing. We have the time information, WIP and debt, all combined into one summary layer. So this is a very useful tool, or very useful data set for building sort of top-level analysis and potentially dashboard-type reports in Excel, all hooked into the underlying solution. Some other areas we can see here, just going down, we can get into the more operational type reporting, say for example workflow. Just check the data source is set. There we go, we're good. And this hooks into a specific workflow cube with, again, the same options available in terms of the measures, but obviously to do with the workflow this time. And you have the drill paths and hierarchies that are relevant to this data set. So in this case, you can see here I've got a period due for 2017. We're choosing all standard matters, but you could then choose specific type of standard matter here, and we're looking at various counts per stage or milestones they're at within the workflow. There's a series of tabs that represent, again, the different cubes available. So we've got to focus on overall workflow, we've got some milestone detail, and even some capacity information where it combines the milestone budgets against staff fee earner budgets for a rudimentary capacity view of the system. But again, all these pivot tables work in exactly the same way. So once you've learnt one, you'll be able to use and access other data sets and use it exactly the same way. And just finally, an example of tax information. Exactly the same deal. We only have one tab here because there is just one tax cube. We have New Zealand and Australian tax data sets, but as you can see here from Australian point of view, we've got counts of specific returns at statuses per matter partner. That's the breakdown there. But as you can see, you've got the breakdown potentially by things like family group or just clients, managers, and so on. Okay. So just going back to the core option here, as soon as you build your report, You can use Excel in whatever way you want to render it as you wish. You can just use the pivot formats here. You can use the pivot tools that are available to you. Up here we can go, for example, pivot chart. We might want to convert this data set into a chart. Click OK, and then we can go, well, I actually want to see it on its own sheet. And there we go. So we have a chart in exactly the same way as the pivot table. It's fully active, fully filterable. You've got the pivot table, the field list there to use. So you can build up whatever you want to see connected directly to the underlying data sources, that is the PIQ solution, and just refresh the data and work with it as you wish. Again, just to emphasize, the advantage of this is there's no rekeying. The data is actually in the underlying solution. Everyone's using it. If you've used the pivot tables, the dashboards available through the Practice IQ intranet site, that information is identical to this. So this one-stop shop for the information. Okay, I think that's probably enough of the Excel demo. Hopefully that's given you a quick insight into what's available, how to connect, how to work with the data. And what it's left to do now is just nip back to the presentation and we'll close off. Well, thank you very much for finding the time to watch this session. I hope you found it informative and useful. For any other information on this session or any of the Training Academy workshops that are available, please use the contact information on the screen now. Thank you.